Hi, everyone, and welcome to this new podcast, the You Podcast. And as usual, we always have distinguished guests. And today, our guest is a writer, uh, and she works in the mental health field. Her name is Wid Kattan. Welcome, Wid.
Thank you, Joad, for having me on the podcast.
You are welcome. I hope I introduced you the right way. I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's fine. I'm with.
Okay.
Hello, everyone.
Okay. All right, With so you actually published a book called So Many Hats, between brackets or veils. Okay.
Yeah.
So what inspired you actually to write about this topic in specific, the topic of hats?
Yeah. So the book is a collection of poetry,
Okay.
and it kind of came backwards. Like, it's not that I put in my mind that I wanted to write a book and then I sat and wrote it. It's the opposite. It's like the poems came to me at different times in my life over a few years, and I would write them in my notes without the intention of making a book or publishing.
Okay.
And then one day, I felt I was just feeling that I was torn between the different sort of facets of my identity, work life balance, being a mom and being a woman. And I drew these sketches on one of my sketchbooks. And they were of this kind of abstract women in different hats. And I left it. And then years later, I was trying to write another book. That one I was trying to write, actually, which was supposed to be titled How to Be a Good Enough Mother. So it was like a how to book, and I was facing writer's block. And in my boredom, I was just looking through my old poetry, and then I saw them falling into these different hats. And I remembered those images I did years ago. And I thought, oh, I could just stop writing this book and write a more fun book just of my poems. And I started collecting them and looking at each poem and asking myself, in which voice did I write this? Was it mother? Was it woman? Was it individual, human?
Okay.
Um, yeah, and the idea of hats, I've always liked hats since being young. And
Okay.
we use the metaphor of, okay, I'm going to put on my therapist hat now. Like, I might say that to my friends. Or let's put on a researcher hat.
Mm.
It still
Mhm.
allows you to be who you are, but also you're giving a sign to someone that you're stepping into a role. So
Okay.
that's kind of how it came
So
about.
what hat are you wearing now?
Mm.
And
So in a way, this book took years to write, and then the publication, and it's been out for 2.5 years now. And this whole process helped me not need the hats so much anymore. We might talk about this in another question, but so I feel more integrated after writing the book and talking about it and sharing it. So I can spend more time just as myself. So it would be the human hat or the soul, which is like more basic than the human hat, uh, and not necessarily in a role. So a few years ago, I might have really wanted to pay more attention to the introduction, given a lot of thought to the question of, well, when people ask, how do you want to be addressed here? It's like, I don't
yeah,
know. Should I
yeah.
keep the D of doctor or should I not? And I love that. I'm still not like very far from fully at peace and integrated. But I like how it doesn't matter so much, and I don't have to announce to each person, each moment, I am with mother, I am with doctor, where the other
Yeah,
things are not allowed to show, Jawahir? Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Do you think sometimes when you address yourself in a certain way or you give yourself a title that people treat you differently because you have that certain title instead of just, a human being, you know?
Oh, for sure.
Mm.
Yes. In good ways and bad ways. So you kind of force yourself and others a little bit, or you invite them into a role play.
Yeah.
So it was really funny how, I don't know if I should share this, but when we came back from Canada,
Okay.
just in the household, right? So, what would people address me as? would they say Dr. Wid, like the people working, or any place, if I'm going to buy something, a car or something, would they might address the men with their titles, doctor, but you will not be doctor, you will be madame. And it changes the whole interaction, right?
Okay.
Residents, like, okay, so they call me Doctora Wid, but once they graduate, I think we're more on even ground. And if I call him Doctor now, it changes the whole interaction. And I think we need to give a lot of thought to that. Uh, Either we're
Yeah.
on first name basis or we're on doctor basis. So yes, it's an invitation and how you want to show up. And I think it's fine to use it if you need it.
Yeah.
Um, but be conscious of it and how it's affecting you.
Yeah, and also when you have a when you put yourself a certain title, you have to act like this title, not act like in a different way, and people say, okay, she said that she is so and so, so why is she acting this way? You know what I mean? So
Exactly.
so so
So,
so
yeah.
that title gives you a little bit of weight, you know? And I
Yeah.
think, yeah, and I think when you remove all titles, you're gonna be like just anyone. You're not gonna care too much, right? This is what.
So it's a weight,
Yeah.
and it can also be a burden and a cage. So if I'm trying to help a patient in the hospital who is not being treated well, I might go and say, excuse me, I'm Dr. Wid Kattan, and this patient has been with da 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 da. Like, I will do that. And
Mm.
because it's going to serve a purpose, and I don't know if that's right or wrong, but it's something I would do. Now, but if I insist on always being Dr. Wid, like when I'm at a wedding, I'm Dr. Wid, and when I'm in the mall, I'm Dr. Wid, then what happens when I come across a patient who sees me losing my temper with my kids in the mall?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's the burden. And
Yeah.
take it to another level, like when you're just in casual gatherings and everyone is expecting you to like sustain the image all the time is exhausting.
Yeah, it is exhausting, I agree. um okay, so you said, or you, because I read few pages actually of your book. You said that the book is dedicated to you, so is it really dedicated to you? Yeah.
It truly is. I think dedicating it to myself was like an act of truth. Um, I think as women, and I'm sure men do too. So I have never had the experience of being a man. So I speak from my experience. But I think really women are often caregivers and they will give a lot and dedicate a lot of themselves. And this book was really about my trying to, you know, come home to myself, you know, bring back the orphans or the orphaned parts of ourselves that are cut off. It was very hard to do. It was something for me. I didn't have a message for the world, and it came at a time of an area of growth that was related to increased worthiness and self-compassion. I was getting to know Dr. Brene Brown's work, still only as a participant, not as a facilitator of her work.
Okay.
And it was hard, and it's still hard, having the book out there in print and you can't take it back. It's hard, so I dedicate it to myself. Now I know a lot of people really appreciated that, like it makes them laugh, and I think it gives others permission to maybe want to do that for themselves in their own projects.
Yeah, actually, I thought of that. Like, why just be honest and say, yes, this is about me. I'm writing this book for me. Like, you know.
Yeah.
Okay, so which one you identify with? Like, which hats? So I think you said human, right? Like, you feel like
Yeah.
you're more into the whole human
Right.
and soul and.
For sure. I mean, your question, this one made me think of before. So there was a long period of my life when I think I only identified with the professional. So as a resident, as a trainee, as a med student, and a wife and a mother. With as a human, as and the spiritual part, there was always that undercurrent spiritual part. And the other parts, the creative, the romantic, the individual, I think maybe out of necessity were toned down. So now I feel, yeah, the more human part or the soul part. One person who read my book said, I feel there's something after. Like, I'm really looking forward to see what's going to happen next. And I imagine maybe if I have another collection, it might be something more soul, spiritual, integrated. Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. So also, you have many chapters with different hats, like woman. I remember human, and what else? I think I can't really recall, but I remember that it was really. You said also woman. So why is it? And you mentioned how hard it is to describe, and you didn't know. So why is? Do you think it's hard to describe a woman?
Yeah, so they were the chapters. I had to open the table of contents also to remember them. So human, individual, writer, woman, mother, romantic, Muslim. I knew there was a woman hat. When I came to collect my poems under woman, they were much fewer. And that made me think, oh, I don't know how to speak in this voice. I think this voice is rusty. And I actually tried to generate more poems, and I can't really generate poems on demand. So there was a stagnant period for a few months, but at least the question was open. Why? Where is this? And I think it might be because, I think this is across history, across cultures, the opinions of how a woman should be are so strong, and people feel so strongly about it. And we're programmed that
Yeah,
what you actually are, or the internal, wise, soft voice you have, is hard to hear, or muted, or lost. Um, Mother was much easier for me to identify with, for example, even wife, but woman behind and beneath all that was harder for me to connect with. Um,
yeah,
and maybe men can also have that same experience. I mean, there are also expectations of what a man should be. But now in my late 30s, what I've discovered is I'm glad to know, and this is not just from me, also in terms of my experience with other women, friends, clients, my work in women's mental health. I think this is a period where the voice becomes stronger, or you have more space to listen to it, or there's more of a need to come back to your womanhood and femininity.
yeah,
And it's exciting, the constant sort of discovery and unfolding, and knowing that there is more power, there's still more to discover. I'm
yeah.
really glad to have this to look forward to.
And especially now in this age where they put a lot of emphasis on like women empowerment, and you are a woman, you're strong, stuff like that. Because we used to like have lots of we had not just here but even the whole world, like a gender related um things, like
Right.
women and men and how they are. And
But Jawahir, even that message, right, of you are empowered and you are strong, certain images come to our mind, and now we feel you have to stand in line with that. Like, everybody line up and download this update. But what about a woman who doesn't want to follow, right? Or it can be fashionable at one time or another for women to stay in bad marriages, for example, or women to leave, right? Let's say it's more fashionable in a certain society to, oh, you're a powerful woman, leave. But there are women who come to me and say, but everybody's telling me that I should leave, but the thing I want to do is to give this another shot. Do you understand what I'm saying? Is that we don't want to substitute one strong message for another, but for each person to honor her own
mm,
journey. That's the
yeah,
that's the struggle, because now the voices are still loud.
yeah. So you don't want to fit into the society standard of what a woman is, which kind of makes sense. So your own womanhood, so each one has her or her own.
Ye- well, I think part of womanhood is to be able to listen to your own wisdom, and that should be different by necessity from one person to another, right? Like, two women could come into my office with a similar problem on paper. Okay, let's say 20-year marriage, so and so number of kids. This is the problem with her work and her spouse and her children. On paper, they could look the same, but after 6 months of therapy, I'm hoping they will reach different conclusions about their lives for reasons that we can't see on paper, but they are related to who they are as individuals in their journey.
Mm. Okay, that makes sense. So if there are any like messages to the readers who are reading your book, like throughout your book, like they say that every book has a message. So what's your message?
Yeah. Well, at the risk of sounding like I'm making a pitch for the book, do buy the book, because one thing is, each person should take away from it the poems that speak to them. And what I've found is, so I ask people I know to send me screenshots of what speaks to them. I get totally different things. Like, there is no one popular poem. I feel men will connect more to poems that are like the human or the Muslim more than the women.
Okay,
But
so can you just like read a little bit of maybe the women part or whatever part you want to read about?
mm, uh, okay, well, I don't know if we're gonna have time for this, but I thought maybe at the end I
Just a
could.
little. Okay, you want to do it towards the end. It's up to you.
Yeah, because the amount I'm eager to give it a go to read, and but I think it will depend on how much time we have at the end. Um, yeah, or I'm procrastinating. I don't know. Maybe I'm nervous about reading. No, no,
No
but
problem.
if you invite me to read at the end, I would love to.
Okay, so now that we can be like different different things. Like we can be a writer, we can be a psychiatrist, we can be like, let's say, a painter or a creative or anything.
Mm.
But there is an Arabic proverb that says the person with more than one profession is lying to himself. I think, I don't know if it's an Egyptian
Can you?
proverb or something, but how do you respond to that? Because
Okay.
I meet a lot of people also, and they say that they are many hats. Like they don't
Yeah.
have one thing. Yeah,
Do you have the proverb like in Arabic? Would you like to say it, or
I can say it. صاحب
yeah?
صنعتين كذاب.
Ah, okay, okay. I couldn't remember it fully. So I think that, proverbs often give wisdom, but
Oh, there is another one actually. Um,
سبع
سبع
صنايع
صنايع والبخت ضايع.
والبخت ضايع. Yeah. So that translates to seven jobs or seven skills and no luck, or
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, no achievement. So I think those are examples of proverbs that maybe do harm more than good, or are somehow taken out of context. Especially now, I think more and more people are embracing having different kind of roles and hobbies. I think people who are 10 years younger than me, even, and
mm,
more so for those younger, are multi-talented.
yes,
um, but I see it, what you're saying, like the surprise, the discomfort, the bafflement others see when they're like, oh, a poetry book, is it, Dr. Katan? Oh, it's Islamic psychology now, is it? um,
mm,
but if you live your life with only one persona, so if I say, okay, I am going to put all my energy into upholding the image of Dr. Wid Kattan, okay,
mm,
academic psychiatrist in the university, then what happens the day I retire? Who am I?
yeah,
And what do I do when I'm in rounds with residents and I get a phone call because, oops, the transportation for one of my children has fallen through? Do I have to like fall into shame or ignore that call or be super apologetic? Or we all know that we all have lives and different roles and facets, and this is okay. So I think it's a choice. Are you going to kind of be more authentically yourself? Sometimes boundaries are needed, of course. I'm not going to be the same person in every relationship. But, or do you want to, carry that very heavy mask all the time? And
yeah.
why stifle it? Like, so I have poems that came to me. Why hold back the urge to write the book?
Okay,
What was holding me back was fear.
okay.
What happens if my colleagues see this? What happens if the students and the residents and my family? And what will they think of this and this and that? So it's all fear. And I don't think we should be necessarily responding to fear as I don't know, something that activates us.
Yeah, because fear is always the it hinders us from progressing, from achieving something, because we are afraid to do something, so we're not gonna do it.
Hmm.
So so I think, yeah, like you said, we shouldn't really respond to fear all the time. But
And you know,
fear is necessary in some situations, but not all situations. So
for sure, I think fear keeps us alive to a
yeah.
degree. There are things we need to fear. But you know, it might sound like insensitive, maybe, for me to say, well, I want to kind of be fully myself, even though it makes other people uncomfortable. But it's also an invitation to people to maybe do the same. Okay.
Mm.
uh, and I think that I know that for at least the people that I'm in a position to try to help, like clients, patients, students, residents, it has come back to me as feedback, directly or indirectly, that it makes them feel more comfortable, knowing that, oh, there's a human behind the lab coat. So when they
Yes.
stumble or they fall or they need to organize their kids' transportation, it's easier in front of me.
Yeah, so they feel like you understand them more because you've been through this. You're not a doctor, the perfect doctor who doesn't have any issues. So, for example, even if I like, if anyone, let's say, I'll give an example, goes to a therapist, let's say,
Mhm.
this therapist is also a human like you, and she knows what you're going through. It's not like it's totally like odd for her.
Yes.
Yeah. So
So it's easier for everybody involved. If I'm 5 minutes late, it's easier because I'm like, I'm really sorry, I'm late because of, and then I might say a human reason, right?
mm,
And also, if I am moved by a story and I tear up, which tends to happen often, that's also, I've made peace with that. And yeah, it gives them permission also not to be perfect.
mm, yeah. So it's the vulnerability that you're talking about. That's really a huge thing.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And I think maybe I mean, I could talk about that a little bit more when we talk about the process of publishing the book. Yeah.
Okay. So also you have, because I want to go. So actually, when I read your book, it was really interesting. Also, a poem about windows. It
Mm.
was really touching. Do you think like yeah, I think you already answered that, but if you want to read the poem, that it's up to you.
Yeah, I'm just looking for it. I think I said it was page 13. So, for example, this you pointed out this poem as touching, but I don't remember many people pointing that one specifically. You know. So here it is.
Maybe it's probably something that resonated with me, probably.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's different for each person. Okay. So here it is. Underneath all my hats, my eyes, they stay the same. Windows into my soul. That's who I am. I am not any of my hats or roles, just another kindred soul. That's it.
Amazing. Wonderful, very wonderful. Okay. The labels, they put barriers to our being, which you already said. They put
Right.
some weight to our
If I
person.
could add
Yeah.
something that's coming to me. So I've been lucky to recently be introduced to the idea of there's a first half of life and a second half. And nobody talks about the task of the second half of life. So the first half is like, what are you going to do when you grow up? And it's like all of these things you check off the list. I'm going to, get married and have children and build my career and da da da.
Mm.
And then the second half, it's all about all of this that you've built to be able to let go of it, or this ego that you've built, this persona, to be able to know who you are underneath. So it's a more internal process. And I think
Okay.
that's the thing, that if you hold on to your hats all the time, you'll be blocked from doing that. Yeah.
You will be blocked from
From
doing.
doing the spiritual work of finding out who you
Yes.
are beneath.
Yes, yes. That's
uh,
really important because people are really focusing on the external and the the big labels and stuff and the achievement, and the stuff, but they're not focusing on the inside, which is the internal. Yeah.
Yes, and I think we need to focus on the external in the beginning. You need to build that up. But once you've gotten somewhere and you have a footing in the world and you have some luxury to slow down, then maybe it's not the wisest thing to just keep collecting titles and certificates and money and status, but like pause and look inwards. So there are books about that, and I just inviting people to think about this. What is the task of your second part of life after what Brene Brown calls the midlife unraveling, not the crisis, but
Mm.
unraveling?
Okay. Um, there's also something interesting about the order of the chapters.
Mm-hmm.
That like you put the human first, right? Because
Yeah.
we are all human at a surface level, or even when we first meet a person, he is a human, and then he is that and that and that. And also, you put the Muslim as the last one.
Mm.
Why is that?
Yeah, I think it's kind of the reverse of how I felt perceived for a long time, especially when I was abroad. So, but let me start with your order. So, we need to meet people where they are. We need to connect with the commonalities. And so, human is the basic connection. So, nothing that is human is alien to me. If this person did this terrible thing, then I know I can do it too. In the right circumstances, I will behave probably in that way, with the same kind of trauma, with the same kind of fear. So connect on the human level, and then once that is established, so if you are able to laugh with someone or cry with someone, then there's a bridge.
So it's that empathy you're talking about, or shall I
Yes,
say, yeah,
empathy. Yep, connection. uh
we're all in
we,
this together mindset.
yes, yes,
Yeah.
and we are more the same than different. Then you can introduce other things that are foreign, because foreign can look scary.
Yeah.
Okay. And that could be like just a different type of foreign, like a stay-at-home mom could be intimidated by a working mom, and vice versa, just because they have labels and preconceptions, and each one moves something in the other. So once they connect first on the basis of human and woman, then they can move on to a conversation, I think, on something else. So now in Canada, so I'm visibly Muslim. I wear the hijab, and I was there for 9 years. And it's a beautiful society, inclusive, culturally sensitive, all that. And still, there were like these microaggressions that happen, and it's known, and you know them, and you feel them in your gut. And it could be as subtle as the once over, that you get from like, oh, this is the new resident. And you're like, oh, please, I just want to start from zero. I don't want to start from below zero and have to prove myself, but you do. And and I'd see like this veil between me and a patient. And then I see when it falls. I see it in the eyes. I know it, and I know when it happens. So I felt to my readers, if my first chapter was about Muslim, I would lose. I would lose them from the beginning. And I'm talking even about some Muslims
Yeah,
because,
because when you are identified, maybe by a religion or by like a group of community or something, you're like trying to tell them that I am different in an indirect message. But human, we are all human, whether we are, no matter what religion we are, no matter what color we are, we're all human. But when you say like I am from, like, it's like, oh, she's from
different.
another group. Yeah, she's not from my group, you know.
Yes, you
Yeah.
you become identified as same or other. It's like the body, okay? The body, everything in the body is either identified as same or other. If the body thinks that its own tissue is other, like a foreign body, an antigen, it will attack, and that's the basis of all autoimmune disorders. But if it doesn't identify bacteria, which is truly other, as other, then you will get sick. So I think there's so much fear that maybe the collective human immune system is so sensitized. Like anything different is scary and needs to be attacked. And I'm not saying I was like attacked physically, but
Yeah,
just
I get what you
a
mean. Yes.
distance. And some of the poems that I really wanted to be truthful about and say in the Muslim chapter are a little bit, there's pain there or anger. So it needed I needed people to love me first
Of
through the
course.
book, through the book, and soften and see me as human before I could say those things that I wanted to say. Because if I didn't, then I've left out an orphan, like a part of me that is silenced in shame. And like it would have been such a big omission and a
Actually,
letdown if I didn't write that chapter.
it's such an interesting order because we all should be identified as our core, not the other things that we get from society. Like, let's say, from when we live in a certain country, we get like we adapt to a certain ethnic group or certain cultures, but
Hmm.
we are just bone and flesh and blood. And
Yeah, and then we have the verse that says وَجَعَلْنَاكُمْ شُعُوبًا وَقَبَائِلَ لِتَعَارَفُوا.
yeah.
We made you different tribes so that you may know one another.
So sometimes differences is also good. So we don't want to give the message also for people that different is always bad. Sometimes different is good.
Definitely, I
Yeah.
different is amazing. I mean, so again, in the verse I just quoted, what I think one of the meanings is to so that you may know one another is because we are foreign and different. But like, imagine if we approached it with curiosity.
Mm.
You know, uh, it makes life so much more interesting to know and be curious. I think curiosity may be an antidote to judgment. Like if you wonder, like I wonder why they do that. I
Yeah.
wonder why they dress that way, and really be open and ask. People will love to tell you, and it
Yes.
takes away the judgment of, oh, they dress like that, which like
Yeah. So
I've
I
had.
think,
Yeah.
yeah, you bring a really interesting point. The problem that people are scared of differences because they're scared of being judged because they're different. Like, oh, she's different from me, she's alien. But when we are just curious, oh, they, like, oh, they are dressed in a certain way, like, why
Yeah.
they're not from us, like, when children ask, it's the same curiosity. They're not judging, but they're just asking why.
Do you know some of my most beautiful interactions
Mm.
in Canada were with patients who were psychotic? Okay, because there's no ego, and they would just tell the truth. And children. So, whereas I've had normal people, normal in quotation marks, cause me trouble, yell at me from the car, or even at work. There was this woman who was like, "I'm going to." She was. Um, it's hard to say. She was speaking to someone else with me on the team, and said that that child with the rag on her head, like, it was so bad, so shaming. So
Mm.
these are interactions that I got from like sane people. Whereas a child at the daycare said to her mother when she saw me, because I was wearing a abaya, and
Okay.
she said, "Oh, mom, look, it's a princess." I'm like, you know what? I do look royal. And then there was this woman with bipolar disorder who was like at the nursing station asking for medication. And then she looked at me and said, "Oh my God, you're so beautiful." And then continued asking for her meds. And next day was wearing a hijab, and she's not Muslim. Like, and I've gotten these really beautiful, because here we're connecting human to human. There's no story, there's no threat.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Yeah,
it, and I cherish these moments.
really nice. Okay, so I want to just say, like, one last question. What has it been actually to publish the book?
Yeah. So the actual external journey of like, finding someone to do the book cover and a publisher and marketing has been really hard for me as someone who doesn't. I like to dream and think, but not really execute. And the book is really quite hidden because I do not do the marketing work I should do. But if I could talk about the internal journey of, so it was collected, it was done, it was there. and the actual saying, okay, go, we will do this and have it out there. You
Yeah.
can't take it back was really difficult. At the same time of my going through this journey, I fell upon Dr. Brene Brown's work, and I was a participant in Daring Greatly, a workshop. And I chose publishing the book as the arena that I worked on during the 3 day workshop. And it really helped. So, what was helpful was two ideas, I think. One, um, if I want the book to touch other people's hearts, then it should come from my heart. If it's going to come from my heart, it's going to be vulnerable. So there's no, it's like high risk, high reward.
Yeah.
The other idea is so vulnerability, as defined by Dr. Brene Brown, is like any situation where there is risk, uncertainty, and emotional exposure. Risk, uncertainty, emotional exposure. And those are exactly the three elements that define courage. So you cannot have one without the other. That's helpful because now, even as I speak to you, even as like I do this podcast about the book, I hear one of my people I know has read the book. I get this gut punch feeling like, oh God, what do they think? And what do they think of me now?
Mm.
When I realize that this does not mean anxiety, danger, retreat. It means, oh, this is a moment of courage. Come forth, the same feeling, different label. Then I know I'm actually, it's not that I need to retreat. I need to come forward. And you're on the right path. Good. So one of the things that Renee says is you can choose courage or comfort. You can't have both. So what life do you want to live? I just love that. I love her work.
Yeah, she's amazing, actually.
Yeah.
And she's a teacher for a lot of, people who are in the field of mental health and, yeah, and therapy, I guess,
Mm,
and coaching, I must say.
yeah.
Okay. So even okay, so you said that when you wrote the book, you felt vulnerable. So it's actually the same as when people write a diary about
Mhm.
themselves. They don't want others to read it because they feel vulnerable, that they are just showing the other side that no one
Mhm.
else knows about.
Yeah. Well, there is a similarity, although I have to say I have so many unpublished and unpublishable poems.
No, I
So
think I think when because I think what you published, you chose to publish it and you were
exactly.
okay with it. But when it comes to diaries, I think it's a different scenario because even a diary, you will choose what to put and what not to put.
Hmm. So that brings the question of vulnerability and safety and trust. We're not saying you should like overshare or be vulnerable at any cost. It's a smart and calculated risk. What I share, I know I can handle, even if it doesn't go well, even if it's not well received. I have enough self trust or trust in my people or in my audience or whoever that I'll be fine and I'll be able to pick myself up from the fall. Like, for example, as a professional, if I'm facilitating a workshop or with a patient, there's this idea of I have a library of shareable stories. There are others that aren't.
Mm.
They aren't shareable yet, or they aren't shareable in this context. That's okay. These are good
Or you're
boundaries.
not comfortable yet to share them.
Yes, exactly. And we learned that in our training in psychiatry and in psychotherapy. You you shouldn't share something that hasn't resolved, right? So yes, I can share with a patient that, oh, I think I can connect to your grief because my father died.
Mm.
Yes, my father died 11 years ago, and I've processed that in my own therapy, and I can speak to it without falling apart. But if my father is dying now, or
Mm.
just died last week, and I will break down speaking of it, then it's not shareable because it's not useful to the person I'm trying to serve.
Yeah, I get it. I definitely get it. So what about sharing on social media and being so vulnerable to, like, you don't know who's reading your status, or
Are
because
you talking about
sometimes,
specifically?
it seems like a trend that the more vulnerable you are, the more people will like you or relate to you
Mm.
because, you know.
Are you talking about general social media sharing that is happening in the world?
No, for example, you've been, yeah, and or maybe some certain figures who like share
Yeah.
their vulnerability just, to attract others, or maybe they just wanna like.
Yeah. So that's not really vulnerability then. So, and Brene talks about this. See, you said to attract. So the intention is really important. The intention is if it's to help heal someone else, if it is to be more real, if it is to build the connection with an individual or an audience, then, and if it's thoughtful, right? Thoughtful, not aggressive, not too much. Um, the content really needs to be thought out, then that can be vulnerability. If it is just sharing every detail or grotesque details or insensitive stuff, or to get a rise out of people or to get likes or to get follows or to get sympathy, then I think maybe some people buy it, but I don't think it's a good idea, not for the viewer and not for the sharer. And I don't think vulnerability would apply to that. It's something else.
Okay, great point.
Yeah.
So where can people find your book, or buy it?
So Amazon.com is, I think everyone knows it. It's your best bet. It's available in Kindle and paperback. And even to Saudi, it doesn't take a long time to get. Virgin Megastores in Saudi, but I can't promise that it's on in every branch.
Branch.
So you might want to call and ask. Jarir doesn't have it, but it's on Jarir Reads, which is their electronic app. And
Okay.
then I will update my website, for which the link should be in my Instagram bio, which is at Wid Kattan. And there will be a page that says all the different places where you can get it. Because some people like the book depository and other places, Mom's World. Um, but I think Amazon is a good start. That's how I would order it for myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely, it's a good start. So what's next with, like, what's your next book project?
Well, I'm following the same path of not planning a book, but I am writing in my notes. Again, many poems are not shareable, but I love the idea that I'm writing. On my laptop, I have like lots of unfinished business. I have like a sad fairy tale. I have a beginning of a memoir. I have that book for mothers. But I imagine it'll be hopefully if something comes,
I
it'll
know.
be out.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
noticed that you always say like mothers, how to be a mother. So I think you're also like really attached in some way or another to motherhood, right?
I
If
struggle with it.
mm,
To be honest, it's not a role that comes to me easily.
naturally. Okay.
Yeah, and I connect with mothers. I feel there's so much unnecessary suffering that if only they knew this or that, or someone said it's okay, or there wasn't so much mommy shaming, or we could let go of our perfections, like really simple things. Yeah, I want to prevent the unnecessary suffering of mothers, especially young new mothers, perfectionistic mothers, things I identify with. Like there's so many things I'm like, oh, I wish someone told me this. I'll read my journal of when I was 23, when I had my first child, and have so much compassion for young Wid. And like, why didn't anybody pick up this problem? And I don't want people to go through that. And that's my specialty, is women's mental health, where most of it is about psychiatric illnesses during pregnancy and postpartum. So I was called to specialize in that. Yeah, but currently, this kind of scientific writing isn't calling me so much as poetry. Uh,
Okay. So you think that poetry can solve lots of issues instead of dealing it in a very scientific, like real manner, or so being a little bit creative, artistic,
I don't know.
storytelling kind of way.
I
So
think you're being very generous with your assumption of that I'm trying to solve a problem or help others, whereas I'm really in a space where I'm just seeing what's coming out of me. So
No, I'm just saying that when people let out what's inside of them in a poetic manner,
yeah,
it feels less, I don't know, less painful than when it is not yet like
yeah.
there.
I think art can be really healing. When
Yeah,
so this is the process. I feel something or something is troubling me.
and you
I'm
write it.
thinking about it. A poem comes. I feel 50% better. I share it. It could get better or worse because I don't know how it's going to be received. You receive it and you tell me, "Oh my God, I love that," or "I feel that," or "I disagree," whatever. There's some sort of connection over it. Then I think the arc is completed, and I'm like, that was worth it. What I'd like to do is to actually read the poems to people. So I haven't really done a book signing. I haven't, and here's my next arena. I don't yet have the courage to do that. Like I have the idea, like, what if I call everybody and nobody comes, or I stumble,
Yeah,
stutter. To
we've all
perform the
been there.
poetry is different, from just having it written there. I'm kind of showing up obliquely from behind the pages, and yeah, so that's why
What if
read.
people like it? What if people think it's silly or something?
Yeah, and you're standing right there. It's like it's not that they're reading the book on their couch and you're having a nap somewhere else. It's like
They're
you're there.
watching you.
Yeah. um, so that's why I had asked you if maybe as a step, although this will be recorded, I could read some poems here. At least I don't see my audience. It would be helpful to me if there were time on the podcast.
Okay, so we are almost done. So maybe if you want to share anything from your book, any exempts, or just if you want to conclude, it's fine as well. But thank you so much for your time. And if you want to, like, read anything, you can go ahead and read. Give us read a
Okay.
little. Yeah.
How many poems would you like?
Probably. Okay, so I would say maybe like one poem. Yes,
Okay.
one last poem.
Then I need to choose it. We'll select one. Jawahir, this is a tough decision. Okay.
I'm putting you on the spotlight now.
Okay. Um, okay. I'll choose a poem about Islam. Okay.
Okay.
So, if Islam should speak. So, basically, if Islam should speak, it would say, there are things you don't know about me, like how my name is pronounced. The S in Islam does not sound like the S in is. It's soft, like in soft. And the
Okay.
L is not heavy, like in lie or low, but light, like in lumière or l'amour.
Oh,
Islam. Say
okay.
it softly. It
Mm.
means in Arabic surrender. That's just my name, a starting point. Please join me and wonder what else we don't know about each other. And the last poem that I closed the book with is, and in the end, I hope that I did not offend. It's hard to always be poetically correct.
I love it.
And my name, Wid, is always pronounced wrong, even in Arabic.
With.
People will insist that I am Wood or I am Widad or
Oh,
Mawadda.
wow.
Like Wid seems too short for everyone. And of course, like everywhere, and in coffee shops, it's always spelled wrong and pronounced wrong. Uh,
Sometimes they write it with an they spell it with an E, and some people with an
oh yeah,
I. But I
or a
think you
double
are,
E. Yeah.
or double E. No way.
Imagine all the names I could be. So when I'm really comfortable with someone, I'll teach them how to say my name. It's really intimate if you think about it. So
Yeah.
that's what I thought Islam might say.
Okay. Thank you so much for your time, and I hope you enjoy it. And thanks for being with us today.
Thank
With.
you so much, Wallahi Jawahir. I really enjoyed being with you. And thank you to all the listeners for listening to us for almost an hour.
Thank you, and really go check her book. It's really interesting, and if you're into poetry or just you wanna like you're wondering what book you wanna like read, Go and read her book, or even a few pages. You'll love it. Um,
Thank you.
yes, yes, I mean it. And can't wait for your next project.